Truth is evil. They say, Corey, what are you talking about? Truth is evil. I like the truth. I want to know the truth. Well, if you want to know the truth, that's great. And you may say it's your care that is great, and that care is what's good, but the truth, that of which you're trying to pursue, is that good within itself? Or is it your care toward the truth that is good? Well, when we think about truth and we want to share truth with others, it can get pretty difficult. And for others, it may actually seem fearful. They don't want to embrace the truth. They don't want to look at the truth. They don't want to hear the truth. And that's because it goes against their current view of reality. And that's usually what we refer to as truth, something that people don't know that they need to know. Otherwise, there already is present truth in case, well, then you don't really need to introduce anything new as truth. It's like saying, well, this thing is healthy. It's like, okay, well, if it's already being done, it's already healthy. It doesn't really need to be told to people that it's healthy. It's like people generally know violence is wrong. It doesn't need to be told to them that violence is wrong. But it does need to be told to them when they forget or when they act against that and don't realize that they are. And so the truth that somebody may be contradicting themselves or the truth that they may not be seeing something could be alarming to a lot of people. It may come across as fearful and therefore they may consider it evil. See, what people fear, and fear is a negative expression usually, it contracts their mind. It prevents them from caring. And if you aren't caring, what are you putting into the world? If you don't care for truth, then what truth are you going to work with? It's just like the laws at work in the world. If you don't learn from the laws of gravity, for example, you don't say, okay, well, this dictates that if I jump, I'm going to fall. If you don't learn to master that law will essentially master you by telling you you have no choice but to follow it when you get hurt. You say, oh, darn it, I learned my lesson. I got hurt. I thought I wouldn't get hurt. I ignored it. I didn't think about the possibility at all, but I did. And therefore, I just proved to myself that there's a law that I really can't break. Unless I find a way around that law, of course, but that law still remains because it's part of nature. And nature is just another word for truth. See, not a lot of people can say what truth is. In fact, I would argue nobody can say what truth is because we as human beings, we are not truth. We are not nature. We are not God. We can pick up bits and pieces and find, oh, well, there's a law that dictates this. There's a law that dictates that. But then if we keep asking the question, why, we can get more details about it, and I encourage that people do want to learn. But when does that learning ever stop? That learning would stop if somebody thought they knew it all, if they thought, oh, I had the truth. The truth doesn't end in its discovery. The truth is always a discovering process, a process of improvement, a practice, essentially. Nature as a whole is a practice. Health is a practice. If you want to make yourself healthy, you need to get into the practice of, well, what is healthy? Right, for me to do, and some of that you learn through awareness, and other you learn from trial and error and experience. Nonetheless, the experience part is the most important part, but if you get hurt, then it's like, oh shoot, I should have probably been more aware. And so, of course, awareness is important. That's why I talk to you in this video. You wouldn't watch the video if you thought, oh, I already have everything figured out because of my experiences or because of what I already know. You watch the video because you assume that there's some new form of information or awareness that could be achieved. And often what I do is simply provide perspective upon what already is here. The same reality that you live in is the same reality that I live in. The difference is that I live it through one perspective and you live it through another perspective. So let's ask ourselves the next question. How do people become deceived? Now, this is the main reason why truth is evil, not necessarily because people can't face reality. That's mostly on them. The real reason why truth is evil is because it can be used for evil, and it technically has always been used for evil, because to this day, as I have said in my other videos, we are enslaved. If I don't pay a tax that is imposed upon me by my government, I will be imposed upon violently against my will to pay that tax. And that tax is essentially theft, someone stealing my own property that property belongs to me. That's ownership. To violate that would be to violate ownership, something I have the right to. And if you have the right to take away my rights, well, then you are claiming to own me and what I own. So it's a very interesting scenario, but not a lot of people can define what slavery is, despite how simple it is, and despite how much they actually probably know about it. They just don't apply it to all their day-to-day scenarios. So, taxation versus theft, for example, right? Well, if we put it in a new word, it's different. So although the truth is it's theft, they cover the truth with a different word, and therefore it makes it somewhat good, even though it's actually evil. So that is a case where truth is being hidden from people for evil, and anytime some knowledge is being hidden from other people, you have to question, why is that knowledge being hidden? If I want to teach you something and I say, hey, I want you to learn everything I learn, and we want to be on the same page, and we want to unite, and we want to get along with each other, I hope I can just synchronize my brain right to you in a sense of, okay, you understand perfectly what points I'm trying to make, so that way there's no conflicts. But if somebody is intentionally keeping knowledge away from another, why would they do that? And that is what deception is. It's certain people saying, well, here's the truth, but I'm not going to give you that truth, or I'm going to twist that truth to fit my agenda, my own man-made whim, or my own man-made systems that I have created to keep you under my truth. The truth becomes under that person because they understand the laws at work, they understand what truth is, and you don't. So they can leverage that over you. So they are the sorcerer and you are the subject, the person who must deal and be like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to do this, I don't know how to wield this spell, even though it's perfectly within your capacity, because they're just like you, they simply have some knowledge that you don't. And so that is why it is important that a lot of people like to look at the occult, for example, and a lot of religion, a lot of politics, they'll never talk about the occult, despite how much ties it may have. And I don't even talk much about the occult because it doesn't relate much to common sense everyday nature, although of course it deals with it, as does politics and religion. The problem is, why is it occult to begin with? That implies hidden. That's what the word means, occult. And so occultism wouldn't really exist if we were being honest with ourselves all the time, if we were really just telling things like it is. And so if we are not telling things like it is, being honest for the truth, then the truth is there, but we're not working with it. So truth becomes evil. And that's exactly what happened in World War II, for example. Right? Many people studied the works of Hitler or Marx or many other leaders of the world and said, wow, what they're saying is truthful. And a lot of people today, they look at politicians, they say, wow, what they're saying is truthful. I can relate to it. A lot of people will use personal emotion and bias. Of course, that is not probably the best way to prove the truth, because the truth doesn't really care about your opinions or your feelings. Again, I can jump off a cliff if I think I'm going to survive. Well, that's regardless of what the truth actually says if I will survive, right? But if there is some truth in what they're saying, which is very possible, you are going to look at that and say, wow, that's truth. And nobody else is saying that truth. Therefore, that truth makes it more powerful. Because here's a truth that no one else is saying. But do you realize that by giving way to somebody who says something that is the truth, you might be giving them more than what they actually are? And you might be assuming that they are the truth, or that religion is the truth just because it has aspects therein, or that conspiracy is the truth just because it has some truth within. There's going to be truth in everything depending on how you look at it. Are you looking for the truth, or are you looking for the ideology? Are you looking for aspects of the truth that you can relate to, so you can relate to an identity, to relate to an ego, or are you actually genuinely trying to search for the truth on a pursuit of knowledge, for an ever-truth, which is always something to understand, realizing that the learning has never ended, you don't know everything, and nobody can speak wholly for the truth, and therefore when anyone's making an argument, there's no reason to shun them out, there's always reason to listen, and there's always reason to talk it through with yourself and with others, if need be, in case you disagree, or in case something just isn't right, you don't understand their position, etc. right? And when people put themselves in debates or in scenarios like politics where there is presupposed conditions of this is how the conversation will be done, this is how the knowledge will be shared, is that honest of sharing knowledge? Is that honest of sharing truth? Because again, truth requires a medium of somebody sharing it with them. Truth just wants to appear. It doesn't need that medium to appear. That medium might become the truth. That piece of paper that has the truth on it, people are going to start to worship the paper as truth, even though the truth is actually what they want. And the truth is actually what they live under. So they live under this piece of paper, although the truth is what the paper actually is trying to achieve. But of course, again, you and the paper cannot be the truth. So it's an important distinction to understand, as these are tools, mechanisms, and aspects therein of nature, therein truth. And you are simply part of that picture. And to say there is one answer or say there is one truth would be quite silly. See, because I can say, well, love is the answer to everything. Well, it isn't, because there's going to be times where you don't need to love people. You're going to have to say, okay, well, this love is toxic. I can't keep loving somebody who's not loving back, you know? And then you say, well, what if everybody's loving to each other? Well, that's just not reality. There's going to come a time and place for anger, for other emotions. Otherwise, those emotions would not exist. There's a reason why wrongdoing exists. It's because it teaches us what's right. So therefore, truth contains evil, and truth is supposed to have evil, because it teaches us of what is good. But that's, again, if we work with what is truth. And that's what makes us good, is when we work with what is evil. And we say, wait, this evil doesn't have to be evil. It's just the inverse of the word live. And if we want to live, we need to really break down and reverse this whole idea of evil. Because all evil actually is anyways, is a reversion of what is good and what is natural and what is healthy. So if evil is that inversion of what is good and natural and healthy, then all we got to do is revert the reversion. But how do you revert the reversion? We'll talk about that. So Frederick Douglass, for example, somebody who's a former slave and abolitionist, starts getting a great voice back in the 1800s. They talk a lot about the abolitionists and how they ended slavery because it teaches us about freedom. Well, he went about, very influential voice and said a lot of truth. What happened after that? He's trying to end chattel slavery. Well, the politicians start seeing his presence, they start seeing his impact, and they start to say, hey, you can join us in our political parties, you can even meet the president, you can get involved, even though all the abolitionists that helped you, by the way, were pretty much anti-authority in every aspect of life. Frederick Douglass, on the other hand, became quite buddy-buddy with a lot of political institutions, and, well, that's because they helped him with his own agenda of ending chattel slavery. And so he's thought, well, that's a win, we can free people. But these politicians and these people who are participating in politics, just because they're doing something truthful or they're pointing out something that is truthful, does not make them truthful to be in their position. It does not make them justified to be in their position in the very first place. So this is where it can get very tricky, right? Just because you can buy someone's freedom or vote for freedom or use paperwork for freedom does not make the paperwork or the vote or the buying actually right. What makes freedom right is freedom itself. That is the goal to achieve. Thus, it is the most important thing that should guide all your actions, not the piece of paper, not the method toward getting there. So those methods can and they probably will be used whether you like it or not. The point is you need to understand your priorities, because if you get stuck in things that are not of reality or not of truth, guess what? It's evil because of the truth therein. You get convinced that because there's truth in Mein Kampf or there's truth in Karl Marx's writings, that therefore what they're saying is so truthful they need to be followed, and everything else is therefore justified or more justified as to what they're saying. Somebody reads an article, they see something is wrong, they assume the whole article is wrong. They see something is true, they assume, oh my gosh, this is a great news article because it also maybe perhaps agrees with them and their personal views. Again, our personal views are irrelevant, but we tend to mix our personal views with the truth pretty often, and sometimes we do it by habit. I say sometimes, it happens all the time because our human bias is always going to be there. I did a video on why bias is actually pretty important, why we can't just ignore bias and why we should be biased. But understanding what is bias and understanding what is truth is understanding the difference of what are we compared to what is nature, our time and place. Are we overstepping or are we understepping? Are we not using our conscience at all? Or are we overthinking everything where we can't do anything at all? Are we super compassionate and we have sympathy for everything where we're not eating or consuming anything? Or are we, super domineering and destroying everything, not caring at all? No, and there's a lot of extremes in this life that we see. It's like, wait, there's a time and place, and we can understand that we don't have to fall to these extremes. And then people wonder why people fall to extremes. Well, perhaps it's because of some truth that they held on to and they did not want to let go of. They said, I like this feeling, I like this thought, I like this person, and I'm going to attach myself to those things because of some truth or something that I need, some emotion that I get from it that makes it feel righteous. And so this is what deceives people, is their own deception to following others or following ideologies, religions, politics, you name it, because of some aspect of truth that is being used for evil, as we see as the results of World War II was catastrophic evil, despite every soldier thinking that what they were doing was right. And the fact that they thought that they were doing something right and the fact that they acted on it is a good sign. But the fact that they got deceived into doing something wrong that they thought was right is the problem. And that is the pinnacle as to why statism and following orders is so dangerous. Again, aspects of truth. Does that make it the truth? Truth is a forever pursuit, as it is health and nature and right, and the truth of reality is that it naturally contains evil. And people who are statists, they will say, well, without the state, without government, we won't have this, and what about this evil and that evil? And therefore, because of those situations being solved through some aspects of truth, they justify a system which is by definition not founded in truth, because it's founded by other human beings. And it's founded by other people's whims, and it can change at any moment, and it is involuntary, and it is basically the nature of slavery, but they ignore those factors because they want to excuse it with the some aspects of truth there in it. Again, you're going to find truth in everything. It doesn't make it justified. You must pick apart the truth and be gone with the rest, and act in truth as much as possible within your life. You don't need to cooperate with evil at all. You can do your best every step of the way if you're conscious and if you are aware and truly willing to learn. Unlike, oh, well, it's just the system's the way it has to be, or, oh, this is the way it's always been, and we can't change it. We can't change people's minds. And then you wonder why it's evil, and then they say you are utopian because you're non-reality. They're embracing their truth, and their truth is dystopia. Their truth is the world that they've always lived in. That's the only truth they can see, and they see no other truth. They've stifled their imagination with fear because, again, fear is contracting their brain and all of their thoughts. And a lot of people are not going to be able to comprehend what I'm saying because that is what evil does. It's twisting what is truth, so you don't even know what world you live in, and you don't know who you are and who you associate with, how you achieve morality, what is morality. But if you understand a general sense of it, work with it, run with it, and see where it brings you in your life. And you say, well, I end up getting hurt. Would you not expect that in an unnatural world? Would you not expect that in a world of evil? Of course you should expect it. Expect the truth to be evil to other people, but if you work with the truth, it doesn't have to be evil to you. That's the deal. And you don't have to make it evil for other people. You're trying to make their lives better. The problem is they might take it as evil because they're fearful. And it's evil ultimately to them because of their own ignorance. Okay, you do your best. You don't worry necessarily about everybody else. I worry about everyone. Yeah, I want them to be free. That's why I make this video. But I can't sit around worrying all the time about everybody, because I recognize I have to do the best that I can within my reality as living the truth as it is. It's so hard to focus on everything that's going on in the world that the best thing you can do is focus on yourself, because there's always work to be done on yourself. There's always more to learn. So therefore, take the time and take presence upon yourself, first and foremost, before you start pointing fingers at everybody else. But again, that's a reality. Facing reality is there is yourself. There isn't this world of millions and billions of people other than what you see on some screen or some internet interface. In reality, there's just you and maybe family and some friends and people you see on a day-to-day basis. That's reality. You face reality, you say you want to face reality, then these politicians that are miles and miles away, they wouldn't exist. These pieces of paper, they wouldn't exist. These different ideologies, they wouldn't exist. And to the things that do appeal to us, like natural law and the universal timeless concepts, you would understand them even if you use different terminology, because you would be living your own honest reality, and if those things are within the honest reality, you would be naturally finding it for yourself. So in summary, we don't see truth as evil when truth is exposing evil. We only see it as truth. And this is true, but evil can still get mixed in if we don't have enough knowledge of what truth is. So in truth, in nature, we have conscience to know what is good. We have the ability to understand what is right. Why do we follow conscience? To do what is good. Right? And what if we ignore that? We ignore the knowledge that we have of the truth. Well, the truth becomes evil to us because we aren't embracing it. It's evil, it's fearful, right? And somebody might be following their conscience, and we say, wow, it's great, they're following their conscience. But then they say, okay, well, I'm following my conscience. My conscience tells me we need to vote for this politician. We need to do this system. Is your conscience correct just because you're following something that is given to you by your nature? It's like the people who say, well, government is just people working together and we hire them, and they bring it down to like human natural terms so it sounds pleasing to people. So it sounds like it makes an appeal to say, like, this is therefore justifying the system. That's what they're doing, though. Exactly what they're doing. They're justifying the system. It doesn't mean the system is actually truthful. It means they're trying to make it truthful. Is it actually truthful? Have you ever actually pursued the knowledge of, is it actually truthful within itself? And most people have not. Most people have not evaluated what is statism, what creates the state, what measures, and what does the state do with every single law it passes, and that is violence. People can't comprehend that because they never questioned it before. So truth becomes evil because we believe something to be true when we don't actually know if it is true. And truth becomes evil because we want something to be true and people start to think it is actually true when it isn't. So you have to understand that truth is evil because of all these different aspects. Does that make the truthful truth evil? Well, that's going to be a question for you to think about, because when we really pass down the veils of reality and all the illusions that have been set upon ourselves by our own enslavement and by our own ignorance, we realize there's truth, that of which we currently believe to be the truth, but then there's more truth, which is the truth that we were afraid of or we didn't embrace all this time. And so the question is, again, how honest are you willing to be? How do you deceive people? When they aren't thinking for themselves, when they aren't embracing their truth, when you want to present to them some other truth that appeals to them so they can somehow continue your evil. Your evil, which you, again, is keeping knowledge of the fact that it might be manipulating other people, the fact that it is something that only benefits you, something that they can't do themselves. And how do you continue evil? By making it seem more justified and more legitimate and making it seem more like the truth. You make everything around the environment justify your action, and soon a wrongdoing seems perfectly legitimate to everyone. You make the truth evil by making yourself in place of truth. You make yourself the authority. And that is what governments have done. That's what all people who claim to have authority have done throughout history. People talk to me, they say, This is just an endless cycle. It's always going to rise and fall. I say, hey, look into the Tytler cycle. That's not true. If you understand the mentality that creates the condition on Earth, and you break that mentality, we know the mind creates everything in this world, then that will never happen again. It's a matter of what knowledge is in current circulation of the world. We have the internet, which never existed before. We have ended chattel slavery, which has existed for thousands of years. And if we can end those things or start new things, then we can absolutely create another change in this world. We aren't just stuck in endless cycles. The only cycle that we end up in is our own ignorance, and learning from our own ignorance over and over again to learn what is truth and what is nature. So it does evil to us. Truth is doing evil to us by giving us the consequences to our behavior. But that doesn't make truth evil. It makes ourselves evil for not aligning to truth. And so this is why truth can be evil. And that's the whole point of why I'm making this video. So again, although we can be ignorant, and ignorance is the only evil, knowledge is the only good. And guess who said that? Socrates, who also said, to know means you know nothing. So what does that mean? It means humbleness. It means that we can't assume that we know, or that we know how everything should work. We should embrace the reality that already is here. And that is how we face reality, is by embracing it. That's the best thing we can do, because then we don't create anything new. We're not attempting to be dishonest. We're not attempting to be authority. We are simply listening to what already is here so we can embrace what is the natural authority, the natural reality. And nature is what has always existed. So therefore, we're not creating any new existence, no new state, no new law. We're simply embracing the already state, the already law, the already here and now has always been. And we simply keep ourselves ignorant of that, and we end up hurting ourselves in endless cycles. But that's just upon ourselves. Nature continues its own existence, and it has its own cycles accordingly to its own natures. But regardless, you can ask yourself a simple question on this matter. What is truth being used for? And is it being used for anything other than truth itself? I do this work because of my moral obligation. Recently hit 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, and I say, hey, that's not bad. I mean, listen, I don't support YouTube necessarily, but I choose to be on the platform. I choose to stay there, and I would be willing to work with it and its guidelines if I want to stay there, because I want to share this knowledge, and I don't think this knowledge is that bad. Of course, I want to end slavery. I think the message is actually quite good and quite moral, if you ask me, and based in philosophy, not based in theory, or not based in some ideas that could be potentially the truth, but nobody really knows. So I can talk about conspiracy theories all day, but really talking about the universal timeless stuff, this is the most important. And it hits at the root to what's going on. So why would I want to talk about anything else other than for traction or debate or controversy or distraction, which is not what I'm in this for. So I'm going to share the truth itself, and you can decide what you want to do with it. If you embrace it, well, great. You are facing reality, and therefore it's not going to do evil to you. If you ignore it and you ignore everything I say, and you don't even come up with a way of refuting my statements, well, then you're asking for a greater confrontation than actually giving me some sort of dispute. I'd rather hear somebody's concerns rather than hear nothing. Because as, Lysander Spooner and Frederick Douglass and many abolitionists have said, is slavery can only grow in the quiet and people being in servitude and allowing it to happen. And that's how all evil continues to grow, is good people letting evil happen. People are afraid of disobeying, but you have to stand up to your destiny, stand up to the purpose, and stand up for what is the truth. Because otherwise, truth is going to bite you in the butt. It's going to be evil. And then everybody's going to see the truth as evil, and then somebody's going to propose something else that says, I'm going to speak to the fact that that truth was evil, and I'm going to get your vote. And I'm going to speak on the fact that we can make this new truth. Even though we can't make truths. We can't create truths. We can't create rights. We can't create what is healthy. We need to simply understand what is healthy. Because we are given this body. We are given this world. We aren't creating new worlds. We aren't creating new bodies. Even when we do supposedly create a new world or create new bodies, we're simply using the resources that are already here, given to us from the world. So people think might is right. But what is the mightiest? The mightiest is nature. And I see so often people lack purpose, they lack destiny. Well, I want people to know that nature is truth, and nature is authority, truth is authority, knowledge then is authority, because you don't have nature without knowledge. You can't embrace nature without knowledge. You can't understand truth or embrace truth without pursuing it. And so always pursue it. But to always pursue it without dictating it upon others at any given moment would mean that you don't support government, and you support individual thinking and individual conscience. You support people not just following the collective or the mass society's ideals because they proclaim to have the truth that you don't, or that they are the messenger or the requirement for the truth to manifest when the truth is already here and present within nature. Thank you.